When someone thinks of a dive watch, or really any watch, you're probably imagining a large watch with a black outer bezel, highly legible, usually coming on some form of a steel strap. But that's not always what a dive watch looked like. The first dive watch, it would look like something very different than what you're used to. It was small, it was rectangular, it wasn't very legible, but it was a watch that was waterproof, and so they called it a dive watch. That all changed in 1953, when the CEO of Blancpain, Jean-Jacques Fiechter, was diving off the coast of Cannes and nearly ran out of oxygen due to a failure of his watch. Upon surfacing, he had the idea, what if we built and engineered a watch designed to go diving from day one? What would that look like? One of the things that makes the 50 Fathoms so iconic is that, whether people realize it or not, it is the watch that influenced the way everything that came after it would look and feel. Instead of just standing here talking about it, let's take a look at some of the most iconic models from 70 years of 50 Fathoms. What we have here are 5 different watches, 6 if you count the one on my wrist. But what we're really looking at is 70 years of the evolution of that original idea for what a purpose-built dive watch would look like. While there has been subtle changes and variations, most notably in those early years, the general ethos and design has really remained constant. The first watch here is the original Blancpain 50 Fathoms. It's our earliest watch. It's from about 1955. So keeping in mind, we're only 2 years into the production of this watch. It has a multi-part case. You have its original engravings on the back stating 50 Fathoms, shock protected. That was a very important thing for him. A dive watch that was going to undergo the rigors of underwater world should be shock-proof, automatic, and highly legible, not to mention, of course, extremely water-resistant. So if that was the original idea for the 50 Fathoms, what happens when we move a few years into the future? Well, Blancpain came up with the mil-spec, and the real contribution to the mil-spec was really the creation of what you see at 6 o'clock. That small circle is a moisture indicator, and what it does is lets you know if the gaskets and the waterproofness of your watch have been compromised at any point during your dive. And that is the technology that enabled Blancpain to become the outfitter to some of the world's best navies. We can then jump forward to a very interesting watch, the one that actually happens to be on my wrist. And while it looks the same as the others, there's one important distinction. This particular example says Aqualung on it. Aqualung was the brand for retail diving that was founded by Jacques Cousteau. And Jacques Cousteau quickly became one of the biggest supporters and promoters of the 50 Fathoms as a professional dive watch. From there, under the ownership of Swatch Group, a new 50 Fathoms is born. And while it looks very similar to those that came before it, it's an entirely modern watch. The bezel's now made of sapphire crystal. This particular case is made out of an ultra-lightweight titanium, and you can see that the case itself has been changed slightly and made a little bit bigger so that it's even more legible underwater. And while this is the 50 Fathoms that most people have come to know and love over the last decade or so, for the 70th anniversary of the 50 Fathoms, Blancpain has released this, the Act 3, which is the triumphant return of that original 50 Fathoms case. It's thinner, it returns to that 41.3 millimeter case shape that the watch debuted with in the early 50s, and it's a loving one-for-one homage of the mil-spec featuring that iconic moisture indicator at 6 o'clock. This particular Act 3 is being auctioned by us at Sotheby's this December for the benefit of Oceana, which is a charitable organization dedicated to saving and preserving our oceans.